there, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Talking Marijuana. We are your hosts. I'm Barry Kramer. I'm the patient operator of California Patients Alliance. We're a fully accredited GLACA dispensary here in the city of Los Angeles. Come and visit us if you're a patient.
And I'm Yami Bolaños. I'm the patient operator for Pure Life Alternative Wellness, which is at our new address on DeLong Pre in Hollywood. I'm also the president and the founder of the Greater Los Angeles Collectives Alliance, who's been setting the mark of excellence in medical marijuana in the city of Los Angeles since 2006.
True that.
And with us on the phone, Mr. Don.
Hello, everyone. This is Don Duncan. I am the California Director of Americans for Safe Access.
And Don's coming to us from Sacramento today, so he's on the phone with us, and we have a special Skyped-in guest.
And his name is Joe Grumbine. Joe Grumbine is the founder of the Human Solution, and he's here to tell us all about it. Joe?
Yeah, hi, Yami. It's always a pleasure to come and talk to you.
Hey. Nice to hear you, Joe.
The airwaves or whatever it is that we were talking through. It's made my life a little easier.
The interwaves. We can come from the interwaves now. And,
the interwaves. I like that. All right. I'm going to surf some interwaves for a little while. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Thank you so much. You've been with us before in the past. It's really nice to have you come back and update us, let us know what's going on with Human Solution and with you.
So why don't you tell us...
There's been so much that's happened since the last time I came out there. I think the last time I came out there, I had recently got out of jail, and it was about a year ago or so, and I was on a mission. I think the last time I came out there was right after we came back from our trip to Montana when we went up to Chris Williams' federal sentencing hearing, and we talked about that whole bus trip and all that. Well, what happened was I sort of set myself on a mission, and when I got out of jail, I realized, sometimes time isn't what you think it is, and sometimes, you have it snatched out from under you, and I said, I'm going to make the best with the time I have, and I've been, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but my personal case has been on hold while the appellate court is trying to figure it out, and I've had a year and a half without really anything major happening, so there's been a stay on my trial, so I've been able to focus on activist work. And what I found is that all across America, and actually into other countries as well, prohibition is rampaging hard, even though on the surface it seems that we're making a lot of progress. We have over 20 states now with medical laws and 2 states with recreational laws, and Colorado's big boom town, and everybody thinks that we've won. And the truth is, I receive phone calls and emails every day from people in every state, including Colorado and Washington. We actually have 5 new cases that came in yesterday that are federal cases out of Washington. So all these people that are going around going, we won. It's not entirely the way it is. And
it's still a little ignorant of the truth of the situation. It does seem that way on the surface, but the devil's always in the details, and we're not quite there yet. We're definitely not quite there yet.
Barry, it's Don, and I can second that motion, and we're getting those calls to the DA's office, too. We're definitely seeing a pendulum swinging back in the other direction, too.
How do you mean, Don?
Well, as we make progress on some fronts, legalization in 2 states and medical laws in 21, we're going to get pushback. There's going to be a backlash for progress. And I think we're seeing some very aggressive law enforcement activities. We're also seeing efforts to roll back medical cannabis right here in California. We never thought we would lose patient cultivation, and it's up for grabs right now. So we need to be careful. We have to be constantly vigilant. We can't get complacent saying,
True.
the president said it should be legal. We're on the way.
Right. No, true. Thank you. Hey, Joe, just...
And by the way, there's a big echo on the line.
Yeah, sorry about that. We'll try and take care of it as we move forward. Angelo's working on it in the booth. Joe, just for our listeners that weren't with us on the last show that you were in, I don't want you to keep saying you just got out of jail and no one to know why you were there. It doesn't sound good. And you should never have been there in the first place. So why don't you go ahead and explain that case and then we can move on a little bit. I just don't.
All right, I'm gonna see how well I've gotten at telling a 5-year epic battle story in under 5 minutes. So
yeah, okay. We have under 5 before we go to commercials break. So
we'll knock it down to a minute a year. Okay. So, we're gonna rewind back to 2008. I was operating a collective in California, fully compliant under California law. I actually had a first case that came out of me transporting my medicine to a safe place while we were doing some construction. Got pulled over, picked up my very first ticket or interaction with the law enforcement ever. I didn't even have a speeding ticket before this. And next thing I know, I'm charged with felonies. Next thing I know, I'm hiring a lawyer. Next thing I know, I'm reaching out to everybody. Nobody knows what to do. Next thing I know, I'm fighting my case. Fast forward to a year, the judge dismisses my case in the interest of justice, citing that I was fully compliant of all California law, issues of return of property and funds, everything. I was fully good. I had a get out of jail free card, I thought. 5 weeks later, I'm raided, and everything that I was connected to, everything my partner was connected to, everything, we were raided. This is a state case, though. The feds were not involved. It was just a state case that was brought about by a guy that I fired who was upset and turned out he was a psychopath and launched this crazy accusation, and that turned into this investigation, ultimately turned into a raid.
Wow.
Fast forward to almost a year. They offered me a plea deal of a felony, no jail time, just take your 3 years probation. I said, well, I never had a felony. I'm not a felon. I said, no, thank you. A month later, they charged me, hit me with $250,000 bail, and I find myself in the Twin Towers. Fast forward 2 months later, actually, they reduced my bail down to $125,000. Some angels came forward, put up the bond. I'm out of jail. This is now 2011 in January. February 2011, I had a preliminary hearing. They put on a week's worth of testimony. Didn't allow me to present a single piece of evidence. Judge moves it forward to trial. Now that takes us, this goes on and on and on until November of 2011. The judge denies my medical defense at this point.
Wow.
I was ready to go to trial without a medical defense. I said, too bad, we're still going. We filed a writ to the appellate court, and a miracle, they never pick up a writ prior to a trial, but they did in my case. And the day before my trial was supposed to start, they granted my defense. I thought that was all I needed. Give me a defense and I can win. Well, it turned out that in many cases, and especially in mine, they have judges that just don't follow the law. They do what they want. And this judge did not allow me to present any evidence. In an 18-day trial,
wow.
I was not able to present my case, and I was convicted on 12 counts of sales of a controlled substance. And the judge let me stay out prior to sentencing. So between then and the time I got convicted and the time I was to be sentenced, I went on a bit of a rampage, and I put out all kinds of videos talking about the case and lambasting the jury and the judge and the prosecutor for just doing the wrong thing. And the prosecutor used that against me and said I was non-remorseful and defiant and requested a higher sentence because of that.
Wow.
And ultimately what we did is we filed a motion for a new trial combined with 60 declarations from the supporters. This is court support. That's what the Human Solution, one of the things Human Solution does. We'll talk about that.
Right, we'll get into that.
But I had anywhere from 20 to 100 people in the court with me every single day of that trial, and they sent declarations to the judge saying what was wrong with that trial. I go up to my sentencing, kissing everybody goodbye, saying I'm thinking I'm about to go to prison, And I get in there, and the judge steps down and says he'd done some wrong things, and he recused himself at my sentencing. So I walked out there kind of bewildered. 4 months later, the next judge ruled on my motion and granted me a new trial, overturned a jury verdict, and I was going to at least get another chance. 2 months later, the prosecution files an appeal, and for the last year and a half, I've been sitting in the appellate court. Well, in the middle of all that, I got pulled over with an amount of cannabis that was allowed to me by SB 420, and I was not even given a ticket for it. They seized my cannabis, but they didn't do anything. I didn't get arrested. I didn't get a ticket. Next time I go to court, the prosecutor goes, "Your Honor, we want to revoke Joe's bail and remand him to custody." And they have this videotape of this whole thing. And had he watched the whole thing, I think he would have not done this. But turned out, the judge says, "Boom, you're in jail," and doubled my bail. So now I had a $250,000 bail. I couldn't make it. I spent almost 2 months in the Twin Towers, just having my bond revoked. And then finally, an angel named Kathy Z came forward. She put up her retirement and got me out. And so that was the nature of that. They can get you in so many different ways. And I've yet to be convicted of a crime. And I've spent more time in jail than people that have been convicted of violent crimes sometimes.
So you're out of jail. You've been out of jail for a year.
Yes.
And but you're still awaiting your court dates.
I'm still out on a $250,000 bond. They almost took me back right before Christmas. The bond company decided they wanted to renew my bond, and I didn't even know they could do that. And so right before Christmas, they wanted me to cough up $25,000, which of course I don't have. And I was able to negotiate that down to a much lower amount, and another angel came forward and put up this bond. So I've been basically, people have put up over $52,000 to keep me out of jail in the past 4 years. And the charges of all of this are selling a plant.
Wow.
If you can wrap your brain around that, that's $52,000 of bond. You put that times 10% or times 90%, and you know that's $500,000 that of bail that collectively I've been issued. And
this story, this drama that you've been going through is admittedly just horrible for you. It would be like waking up in a Kafka novel or something. But not only, I just want to point this out, not only does it affect you in this really, truly horrific way in your life for an upstanding citizen who's never even had a traffic ticket before this, but then in your storytelling, I just want our listeners to see how far-reaching this is. It goes from you and spreads out. Your family has had to live through this. These angels, they're angels because they're coming to your aid, but this is affecting their lives as well. This affects everyone's life that you come in contact with, and the skewering on that side is just horrific to think about. And that's, I believe, where Human Solution came out of. To get the support from other people to boost up our prisoners that are going through this.
Your organization, the Human Solution, has got to be the most comforted thing out there for people that are in trouble. And because you've been through so much and because you understand it the way you do, that's why it's so successful. You know, and so you should tell us about that. I think we have to go to break, but
we don't have to go to break for a few minutes. So why don't you start in on Human Solution and let us, and we'll pick that up after the break when we
and
go.
how you guys are in different states and all the
Well,
good things.
let me just I'll rewind again back to the genesis of the Human Solution.
Okay.
When I first was charged, again, I'd never been to court before. I mean, I never had any experience with the justice system. And I go into court by myself the first time, and I'm answering charges, and I realize that everybody in court is against you. Me and my lawyer was it, and everybody else was paid by the state or, the government, the judge, the prosecutor, all the public defenders, the court clerk, the court reporter, all the cops that were there as witnesses, the bailiffs, everybody there is on the other side. And it was me and my lawyer all by myself when I said not guilty. And I reached out to every advocacy group I could find. I went to every meeting, everybody, and everybody looked at me and says, well, I thought you were legal, as though somehow I had done something wrong. Nobody had any answers for me. And when I said, well, I need people to come to court, you know, do you guys have anything? Nobody knew anything. And so I just said, whoa. And so I just got up there brought a soapbox with me wherever I went. I started talking to every activist organization I could find locally, and I started reaching out. And every single time I did, everybody's eyes got big, and they couldn't believe it. They thought I was a legal collective, and well, I did too. Turns out there isn't such a thing. And that's the problem, and people have these preconceived notions. And so at my preliminary hearing, the very first time around, I brought in about 20 people. And by that time, we had already created our little solidarity ribbon. And I'll tell you the story of that too. But we all walked in there, and they put on their witnesses, and I put on mine. This is the first case. And, you know, there was this shift. You could just feel the prosecutor didn't quite have his rhythm down. The judge had to look up the law. He had to take a break because he didn't know the law. And even the cops that were testifying, they were just a little off their game. And it was because there was 20 people in the gallery watching them. Yeah, and they're not used to that. You know, if you ever just want a learning experience, I say go to any superior court in America and just sit in any case. I don't care what. And you will get an eye-opening experience. Court is not what you think.
We don't get the justice that we expect when we go to a court of law for justice. You think that's what you're going to get, that somehow there's a fair and balanced hearing of the process. And there isn't. We know, we've been at court support for other prisoners, and you can really feel that palpably. Like you say, everyone in there is there to get you in jail. You're guilty until proven innocent, usually, when you walk into a courtroom, is what it felt like for me. And I never experienced that before I went for court support for some of our compatriots in this. Angelo, should we take a break here? We're going to take a break, Joe. We'll come back and we'll find out about the green ribbons and more about the human solution. We'll take a break.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick.
Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi everybody, Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Podcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Podcast Network.
We are back with Talking Marijuana. Your hosts Yami and Barry and Don on the phone from Sacramento, and our guest Joe Grumbine from The Human Solution. And Joe, you were telling us about The Human Solution, giving us some history and the evolution of this court support organization.
Sure. Well, when we did court support for the first time, we didn't exist as an organization. We were just, I had my collective still operating, and I reached out to the members of my collective to come out and show support, and I was building my case and gathering witnesses and so forth. And so we sort of started this court support team before we were an organization. And then later on, I met a guy named Ronnie Knowles who was going through a federal case. And we got together and we talked about doing a fundraiser. So we did our very first, what we called our Freedom Fighters fundraiser out at Willow Creek Springs, which is the botanical garden and nursery where I live. And we put together this sort of impromptu fundraiser with, music and speakers and whatnot. And it was somewhat successful. we raised a couple of bucks, but not enough to help either one of us, really. And so what we ended up doing was all these people had gathered together, and we had made this armband. Somebody brought some green material, and we cut strips of it, and everybody was walking around with these green armbands and saying, we're united, and just feeling a sense of solidarity. Well, as we continued forward, we actually decided to take those funds and create an entity, and we ultimately, the name of the Human Solution ended up coming out of that. Well, we started talking about, what are we going to do? And we sat down, we had this epic, 10 or 12 hour meeting. We had this long table out in my patio with 20 or 30 people, and we were just hammering out ideas and thoughts and mission statements and all of this. And we decided, we didn't decide, we agreed that prohibition exists today because of a campaign of lies and propaganda and deceit. And America's been duped. And that the only real answer to this is the truth and education. And so that's, the core of what's behind all of this. The other side of it is as a result of all of this deceit and propaganda, law enforcement has waged a horrible war on us, and there's been casualties, untold numbers of casualties. And one of the things that we can do to combat that is to support each other. So we said education and support, that's what we're going to be built on. And then we said, okay, well, if we're going to come in and start developing this court support, we need something that identifies us as a group, but we don't want it to say our name because, judges can be they have a lot of power to do with what they want. They're little petty tyrants sitting in their thrones, and they get to, basically do what they want. But we bank on the Constitution protecting us in our First Amendment. And so we ultimately came up with the concept of this. I'll put it up there so you guys can see it. It's a green ribbon with a red cross on it. And so the symbol of the green is obvious, and the plant, and even just the concept of green, and the red cross is the medical cross. So it basically is a show of solidarity for people that are supporting medical cannabis, and especially those that have gotten caught up into the justice system. So we started making these things, and we're going into court. And what we found is that when even 5 or 6 of us walked in, we were noticed. It made a difference. And not every time, but more often than not, prosecutors would complain to the judges and say, we don't want these things in here. And every single time, until recently in Arizona, a judge ruled against us. But every other time, the judge upheld our ability to wear this symbol because it didn't make a statement. It didn't say anything. It just was a symbol. And it turns out the ribbon is a universal symbol, so it can't really even be patented or trademarked or anything. It's just a universal thing. Anybody can do it. And that's what we wanted. And so, the concept of the ribbon has been spreading out across the land. And, we've got ribbons in, a dozen countries even. So what's happened is we started this little group out of Riverside, California, as a result of my case. And then other defendants started coming and saying, well, I got a case. And every time I'd go speak at somebody's meeting, somebody come and take me aside and say, well, I got a case. Can you help me too? And so we sort of started to create we actually got named the Green Team by a prosecutor in Orange County. And we had a bunch of cases going on in Orange County at one time. And we were, just showing up. And this prosecutor would see us in an elevator sometimes and he'd go, oh, there's the Green Team again. And so we sort of got nicknamed the Green Team by one of our nemesis named Jeff Shunk, who was the DA out of Orange County and just a heavy-handed guy. Now here's something to consider. The reason, again, why this court support is so important is because judges and law enforcement, in many cases, all across the country, it's not just in California, this is literally all across the country, especially where there are medical laws, because where there's not medical laws, they can just do what they want.
Sure.
There's no law protecting you.
Sure.
But when there are medical laws, many judges refuse to acknowledge them. And law enforcement refuses to acknowledge them. I've heard many stories of sheriffs saying, well, I don't care about your law, not in my county. you're not going to do that in my county. We don't want that around here. And that's just the way it is. And so that's what we're up against when we go into these courts. If we didn't have all of us standing together, going up against a judge who just doesn't agree with this law, in many, many cases, people just get railroaded.
So in broad terms, the human solution is basically a watchdog for the justice system. It is to make sure that there's eyes in the courtroom and people witnessing the way justice is being handed out, and whether or not they act, on that, they have this group of people that are in front of them that they have to act out in front of that normally, you're saying, pretty much would not be there. It would normally be their whole team, the court reporters, the law enforcement, the judge, with nobody there to kind of watch or not side with the defendant, but to be there to support the defendant.
There's justice. I think that in your situation, when I actually went to Long Beach to do court support for you, Joe, and that's when the judge removed himself from your case, it was so obvious that he was against you 100% up on the... I mean, we stood in the audience and we're like, what? Oh my God, he was horrible. He oozed of how much he was against Joe, And for him to remove himself, it was because I really believe that there were so many people there watching him. And we would walk out of the court and go, oh my God, did you see what he said? Did you see what he did? I mean, I think that he probably said, I better do this because there were so many witnesses to what I did do that I better step down.
Did you feel reinforced on that as well, Joe, that was a reason that might have forced him to step down?
Oh, I have no doubt. I have absolutely no doubt. Like I said, we submitted, along with our motion for a new trial, over 60 letters from the supporters, just declarations, writing out what they saw that was wrong with the trial.
Well, this is fantastic. I really hope that our listeners do understand the importance of what you've said here and the history of all that and how this organization came to be, because we talk here weekly about getting involved, doing advocacy. I think a lot of regular people, whatever that means, feel that is a burden to them, and it's that they have to do too much to get too involved. And really all you need to do is take some hours and sit in court with a green ribbon on your shirt, and you have made an amazing effect on someone's life, like your life, Joe. So I encourage, again, all of our listeners to really take this story to heart, to know that you have power even as an individual, as long as you can work with organizations like this and get involved. I don't mean to sidetrack us, but I want to make sure that our listeners know, because we really try to enforce that.
How do you get in touch with the Human Solution directly? I know that we're going to keep talking about this, but I just want you to say it now in case there's somebody out there that can write it. How do you get in touch with the Human Solution?
We have a website that's thehumansolution.org with dashes between the words, the-human-solution.org. We're all over Facebook. And currently, I still have my personal number as the contact, because I don't want to make sure that nobody gets missed. And it's area code 951-436-6312. And I pride ourselves on being the personal touch. I reached out to every organization out there, and I never once received. I never reached a live person, never once. And eventually some of them called me back, but I never got a hold of a live person. When people reach out to us, we're there. We're real people, and we're going to share our real experience with you and help. And I tell people, like you were saying, how to get involved. If you can pledge 10 minutes a day, 6 days a week, that's 1 hour a week. If you can pledge that, I can put that to work, and I can put you on task with a dozen projects we're working on.
Awesome.
10 minutes a day.
That's amazing. So please get in touch with Joe.
Lots of work to be done.
The-human-solution.org. Get in touch with them, and like Joe says, he'll pick up the phone if you're giving him a call. If you need his help, get in touch with him. And Joe, just to branch out on that a little bit, you were mentioning that you have chapters of Human Solution. This has grown. It's not just here in California. You have people in other states, possibly even other countries, you mentioned. So address that a little bit.
What's happened. Since I got back from that bus trip and we went up to Montana and we were meeting with people all along the way and handing out literature and letting people know. And more and more people from out of state were contacting us saying, well, I got a case. Finally, I came to the realization that we need to start setting up chapters. Yeah. And so our first chapter was out of Arizona. And then, of course, we started popping lots of chapters out of California, because when you're doing court support, a few great people like me and our little merry gang of court supporters have traveled long distances to show support, but that's not realistic. It doesn't make sense to do that. Mm-hmm. I'd rather have 500 people drive 1 mile than one person drive 500 miles. Mm-hmm. And so we started setting up these outposts, and we popped up one in Sacramento, Oroville, San Diego, 29 Palms, and then it started reaching out. Well, as a result of this trip and the people I was working with, we moved up to Washington, out of Tacoma. We've set up 2 chapters in Arizona. We're now in Nevada, Las Vegas. Then Michigan popped up. I met Steve and Maria Green, who were fighting a brutal battle. Mm-hmm. And Michigan turned into a powerhouse. It turns out it's a hotbed of activism in Michigan, because law enforcement does not like their medical laws.
No, they're fighting hard.
They're fighting hard, yes.
Everything they can to stop it. And just like I was saying, the sheriffs that say, not in my town, this happens in Michigan all the time. And babies are being taken away from parents. And so we're in the process of starting 5 chapters up in Michigan right now as we speak, because we had one real big one, but it makes sense to divide it up into territories.
Great.
We just opened up a chapter up in Manitoba, Canada.
Wow.
People think, oh, BC, Canada, everything's groovy up there. No, they have a very conservative government going on right now, and they're starting to take back some of the progress that the people had gained. And there's a lot of oppression starting to go on up in Canada. We rallied support in Great Britain for a case, Elizabeth Wallace, back in summertime, and we don't have a chapter active there yet, but we're working on it. And that was even a more kangaroo court than mine.
It's amazing work that you're doing, Joe. I'm really just hearing the scope of it while you're under the pressure of the court cases that you're dealing with. I mean, it makes sense that while you're under that pressure, you're actually doing proactive things to get out of that pressure. But it's an amazing amount of pressure on you, and to be doing all these other activities to make sure other people don't suffer the way you have is truly an amazing task that you're doing. We're going to take a break here. But when we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit, Don and Yami and Joe, about what the president said this past weekend, and then kind of bring it back to you, Joe, and see how you feel about it in light of the situation that you're in, because I had a little bit of a problem with what he mentioned.
All did.
But we'll go to break and we'll come back and chat about that. Don, you still with us?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you after break.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
Back.
We're back. We're back. I got glasses on. We're back, and we're talking with Joe Grumbine of the Human Solution.
Don's on the phone with us from Sacramento.
Don Duncan is on the phone with us from Sacramento.
From Sacramento.
And right before the break, we were teasing a little bit about President Obama's interview that's coming out in the Atlantic and in the New Yorker on the 27th of this month, I think, although it's been released already.
Knows what it says.
And it's a very long interview with him. It's about 18 pages. But in there, he was asked about medical marijuana. So give me a second. Let me kind of go over the basics of what his statement said, and then let's dissect it a little bit and see how it comes out in practical terms. So he had this interview, and in the interview he says it's not marijuana is not very different from cigarettes. I don't think it's more dangerous than alcohol, but he did not come out. I'm going to read a little bit from a blog about his position, and the blog comes from Owen Schaefer, and it's out of the Oxford College, I believe. So what he says is he did not come out in favor of legalization, however, and this makes his views, and to a certain extent, the position of the executive branch charged with carrying out federal law, incoherent. By which I mean his various positions taken together are inconsistent. All the times he's talked about this don't add up. Obama may well evolve, and we'll have to see. The incoherence of Obama's views is relatively straightforward. He equates marijuana with cigarettes and even concedes it is less dangerous than alcohol. Yet the sale and possession of alcohol and cigarettes is not proscribed, while the sale and possession of marijuana is. Consuming any of the three may well be a bad habit, not something that kids should be doing and so forth, but simply being a bad habit is not grounds for prohibition, and one could always regulate sales to youths, as is done with alcohol and cigarettes. The only apparent reason to ban marijuana would be that it's very bad for people, going beyond a mere bad habit like watching too much TV. But if the only reason to ban something is because allowing it is bad for people, marijuana is not worse than alcohol and cigarettes, which Obama concedes, and prohibition of alcohol and cigarettes is unjustified, which he presumably agrees with, then the prohibition of marijuana would appear to be unjustified as well. Yet Obama inconsistently holds that prohibition of marijuana is justified. This has been a very confusing weekend for me, and this statement that he made. Don, from Americans for Safe Access, how did your organization and how did you receive that news this week of the interview?
Well, a big conversation we're having internally right now is what does legalization mean for medical? And it can be a two-edged sword. We talked about what's happening in Washington, for instance. On the whole, I'm encouraged by the president's comment, just because in past administrations, they haven't mentioned cannabis or medical cannabis at all.
Agreed. It was a step forward there.
About this and talking about it in a way that's not so drug war oriented. When Ronald Reagan talked about drugs, he talked about cracking down and cracking skulls and locking them up. So even though the president didn't go as far as we want, I'm encouraged that he's talking about this in a relatively enlightened way.
A relatively enlightened way.
Yeah,
absolutely. Consider work.
But here's the problem, and maybe Joe, you feel this as I do in a more personal way. These comments seemed very casual in the statements that he made, and he talked about he acknowledged the fact that we need the experiment that's going on in Colorado and Washington, and mostly he acknowledged that this disproportionately puts minorities in jail because of many reasons we've gone into for other shows as well. But and the casualness with which he said all that, and then to not advocate for the legalization of marijuana, really, I understand why he didn't advocate for that. He's the president of the United States, and that would have been true news. But the half statement, as much as I appreciated it coming out, confused me because there are people like Joe Grumbine who are caught up in a legal system that he should not be caught up in if the president's view of what this situation is valid.
Well, Barry,
yeah.
Let me play devil's advocate and say, what would Joe's legal situation be if the president had said nothing?
It would be his worst. I absolutely agree with you, which is why I come to the real confusion of how I feel about what he said. I'm super happy that he said it. I'm very encouraged that he even believes the things that he said. Those are huge.
Why not? He smoked pot when he was a young man.
Absolutely. He
knows
smoked
that it's
marijuana.
not a bad thing.
If he had been caught smoking marijuana, he would not have
Never
the
been
opportunity
president.
to talk to the New Yorker about legalizing marijuana as president of the United States. So I don't expect him to legalize marijuana, but for him to not point out even his inability to do anything for the people that are in jail, somehow to acknowledge people like Joe Grumbine, whose lives have been turned upside down and whose families' lives have been turned upside down and whose communities' lives have been turned upside down because of the actions of the federal government, which is inconsistent with any logic in the world. So,
Barry, I definitely hear you, and I'd love to hear Joe's thoughts on this. But
my thoughts exactly.
Baby steps are still steps.
So, Joe.
So, I'd let's count them everywhere we can.
As you might anticipate, I do have an opinion about this.
No, really?
It's plain and simple. The president has a power that he refuses to use.
Exactly.
And his rhetoric is politics as usual. Every president in the past 5 or 6 presidents have been the same. They say whatever they think people need to hear, and they go and do what they want. There's no difference. There's been more arrests in Obama's regime than there was in Bush's regime by a lot.
Yeah.
And regardless of what was said, at least Bush was honest about it and said, we're fighting a war on drugs. Obama goes along and says, well, I'm okay with this, I'm okay with that. And do you realize that in last February, James Roman was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole in federal prison, and there wasn't even any pot connected to his case? Okay, and so this is the reality.
Why was he sent? Why? That's a little confusing to me. I don't know that case.
Yeah.
Why was he sentenced if no pot was?
It was a conspiracy charge, and we have over 50 prisoners in America that we know of that are serving life without possibility of
that's
parole.
horrible.
And most of them are serving life without possibility of parole for pot without there ever been pot present. These are conspiracy charges, hearsay evidence, and the way that our sentencing guidelines are, they stack charges in a particular way, and this is what happens in America in 2014.
Yeah, go ahead. I want to say that I'm very disappointed in Obama's statements. I believe that he is true and present to what he used to do when he was a young man. He used to smoke a lot of pot. And if he had been caught once, just once, he wouldn't be the president of the United States. And I think it's pretty shitty of him to not stand up and be a better leader on this situation than what he is. He's just benign at this point. He's benign as far as medical marijuana is concerned, and I think that that's a big disappointment.
So, Joe, I'm wondering, to speak to Don's sort of playing the devil's advocate, is there any difference today after the president? You're saying that's just rhetoric. There's nothing new in what he said. Is that pretty much how you feel on that, or is there anything
I think the federal defendants every single day that never make the news.
I think that's a powerful.
I just talked to one yesterday out of California that was operating a legally compliant collective up in the Bay Area, and now he's going to surrender himself for a 2-year sentence on a plea deal. And nobody ever talked about it, never made the news. There's tons of these things, okay? And here's the thing, the president has the power to pardon and grant clemency, and he's not doing it. He's granted 40 pardons in his whole entire term as president, and it's one of the most miserable pardon rates of any sitting president ever. And he has the ability right now to make a legacy of equality. You know, he mentioned it. The prisons are disproportionately racially full, and people of color are in prison more than people that are not in color. But here's what he didn't say. 51% of our federal prisoners are in there for drug-related offenses, nonviolent drug-related offenses, and many of them are pot cases. That's right out of the Bureau of Prisons website. You can look it up yourself.
Incredible.
It's awful, yeah.
Truly amazing.
Pardons, 40. He should have hundreds or thousands. There's over 100,000 Americans in prison today on drug charges.
That's how the guards stay fat and keep their jobs.
So, along with the president's comments, there are many other signs that marijuana legalization and medical are moving forward. And I wonder, I read a lot of the news this week with you in mind, knowing that you were coming on the show, Joe, and all of it, if you reflect it back to you, is really, it kind of sickens me a little bit. Here we've got the NFL considering whether or not marijuana should be able to be used by players that are in the illegal states. So Denver, Seattle, our medical marijuana bowl that's about to come up for the Super Bowl this year. We'll talk a little bit about that on another time, but. Those players should be able to smoke when they're in their home state. Okay, so now this is becoming a dialogue in the country, whether or not we should move our pro ball players to be able to smoke marijuana. While people are still in prison and going to prison every day, like you're saying, Joe, this conversation seems, I know we're moving the ball forward. It's what we all want to do. I didn't mean that pun by any, I didn't really mean that. But it is it's more frustrating to me than when we were just being raided. Because at that point,
we were all on the same playing field.
Yeah.
The conversation always precedes the action. And I think it's encouraging that this conversation is happening. I think we need to be careful to stay in front of it and shape that conversation because, like I said, there is a backlash that's coming. And, in fact, I think it's happening. And but we don't want to hate on this and say, it's not far enough because it's a first step. So let's
I agree. I don't want to hate on any of the positive steps forward, but it's hard not to be enlightened of the difficulties.
The injustices, but if you're present to the fact that there's people in prison, life without parole because of marijuana, in some instances, like Joe said, a conspiracy to sell. There wasn't even any marijuana involved. It was just a conspiracy. But they're in jail for the rest of their lives. We haven't won anything if that's still going on in this country. If there's still prisoners...
Well, no, we can't fall into the trap of saying we haven't won anything because we haven't won everything.
Well, but the people that are in jail for life without parole, they haven't won anything, Don. They're in jail for life without parole.
I understand that not everyone is benefited from all the progress we've made, but that doesn't mean there's no progress. It's a self-defeating attitude to say that just because the president didn't go far enough, or somebody's still in jail, we haven't made progress. We've made tons of progress, and we just haven't made enough.
I agree. I think that we're expressing
frustration because we're operators, and just like Joe got attacked and raided, and other people are getting raided and arrested every day. We could be too, because they're being arrested for the same things that we do.
But at the same time, it is important to balance it. And like Don says, I feel this. Joe, I'd love to hear how you feel about this. If there is so much movement forward, we can't deny that either. That's just not possible to say that we're in the same place that we were 10 years ago or 20 years ago as far as how marijuana is being looked at. We are moving forward, but we're leaving behind people, and there's the frustration. And I don't know, Joe, why don't you speak?
We have been making huge strides forward. When I started growing cannabis in 1982, there was no protection of anything by anybody. And I did it because it was something I wanted to do. I chose to take on a personal liberty that I believe was granted to me by my Creator. But at the same time, what's happened is we've made these tremendous strides forward, but we've done it in a way that, in my opinion, has caused more people harm than not that has helped, but than had been harmed before. I never had a problem with law enforcement before we had a law that I thought protected me. And I know that there are hundreds, if not thousands of people that are in that same situation. Many of the federal prisoners that are in prison today believe they were protected by state law. And they were operating their organization and their businesses in accordance with state law, just as so many people are. And they believe because they had this protection that they didn't have to worry about it. And now they're sitting in prison. Aaron Sandusky's in there for 10 years. And he had the FBI in his operation saying, you're just fine.
Yeah.
Right after the Ogden memo. And now he's sitting in there for 10 years. So I just think that, yes, we've made a lot of forward progress, but the casualties have come at
a huge cost.
A lot of blood has been shed because of this forward progress, and we're just not done, and we need to keep pushing until we get done. And if we could take 1% of the energy that was put at these industry events and these cannabis cups and these concerts and all these great fun things that we're celebrating our freedom and just direct 1% of that towards ending prohibition,
we could do it.
Prohibition would be over today. I'm just saying.
Let's come back and chat about that on the other side here. We're going to take a little break, and we'll come back and talk more with Joe Grumbine.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey, everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
We are back talking marijuana, and I'm Barry Kramer.
And I'm Yami Bolaños.
And in Sacramento, we have Don Duncan on the phone. Say hello, Don.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, he sounds great. And our guest this week is Joe Grumbine from The Human Solution. We've been talking political prisoners. We've been talking consequences. We've been talking Obama. You have a prison outreach program. Is that through The Human Solution, Joe? Is that?
Yeah, actually it is.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. We have a member named Stephanie Landa, and she actually had an organization called the Landa Prison Outreach Program. And when we met her shortly after we formed as an organization, of course, we realized that, we share a lot in common, so we became friends. Later on, she became a member. Later on, she actually moved into my place for a little while, and we decided to sort of absorb her prison outreach program. We figured, since now we have so many members spread out all around, that we could do more good. And
seems like a natural extension to what you're doing with court support as well.
Right, support. It's all about support. You look up the word support, and all of these things come together. So what we started doing, she would go around to events and meetings, and she'd have a stack of cards, and she'd say, hey, we need to write letters to the prisoners. And so that's what we knew of right off the bat was, well, let's write some letters. So we'd pass a card around, everybody write a couple of words, and we wouldn't necessarily even know who it was we were writing to, but it didn't matter. Well, since that time, Stephanie got sick, and some of our other chapter coordinators have taken over the role of launching this prison outreach program, and that's when we discovered our first lifer, a man named Richard DeLisi. And once we found him, one of our prison outreach coordinators, Adela Falk, basically started researching and finding dozens and dozens. Every day she'd find more and more, and she got so upset by this that she just started really just writing these people letters and getting to know them, starting a pen pal relationship. And then we came to find out about this email system in the Bureau of Prisons called Correlinks. That's Corrlinks, Correlinks.com. And anybody for free can set up a Correlinks account. And then you have to actually, though, have the inmate recommend you, and then you can engage in email conversation. I have, I think, 25 inmates that I correspond with via email.
Wow.
And so what happens is we start to get to know these people, and you get to know their families, and that's what we've started to do, is actually reach out. We're friends of many of the inmates' families now, and we're reaching out. We're actually creating a support group inside of that, a wing of the Human Solution that's going to be a family of POW support group.
That's wonderful.
Out of Washington, though, Kristen Floor is our coordinator up there, and I don't know if you've ever heard of a man named Richard Floor, but he was part of the Montana Cannabis Group, who was also state compliant, got busted by the feds, ended up dying in federal prison, shackled to a gurney, and Kristen, his daughter, was there with him. Well, Kristen's mom, Sherry Floor, was also locked up in federal prison at that time and wasn't even able to see her husband for a funeral or anything. So Kristen launched a huge effort to bring awareness to these inmates, and especially, she brings her dad's ashes around and just tells these heartbreaking, compelling stories about what goes on in federal prison. And she's got a prison outreach table up at one of the farmers markets in Washington State, where she raises money for the prisoners. So basically, they raise money through raffles and donations, and then they load the books of some of the inmates. Wow. And that's what 20% of all of the membership dues that we receive goes directly to our prison outreach program. And we provide stamps and stationery, and we actually just put money on their books, because in federal prison, you don't get anything. You don't even get a comfortable pair of shoes unless somebody puts that money on your books. Finally, we're actually launching an adoptive prisoner program. Now, this is something that is a lot more than committing to putting $50 a month on somebody's books. We're actually acting kind of as an adoption agency, and we're taking applications from businesses and groups especially, and individuals as well, who wish to sponsor a prisoner. And then we've also sent out a survey to 150 inmates in prison right now, looking to see what are their needs. And then we're matching a sponsor with an inmate, and it might be money that they need, it might be getting their story out there, it might be media coverage, it might be legal assistance, whatever it is. We're putting those people together and basically encouraging that kind of outreach. So that's the latest effort that we're making. We're also working with other groups called the November Coalition, a group called lifeforpot.org, and another group called Prisiology. And there's a huge letter writing campaign that's going on to request clemency and letters of pardon. So we're actually putting together templates and working with these other organizations and getting letters written from the inmates families, and from activists from all over the place, and sending them as a big package to the president, and encouraging them, the president, to pardon these nonviolent drug offenders.
I would imagine you have links on your website, thehumansolution.org, to all of these activities that you're doing. So if people want to write a prisoner, if they want to send money, if they want to do that, there's all ways to do that through the Human Solution, Solution slash.
We're always talking to you guys about getting involved somehow, to call your representatives, to push things forward. If you're not comfortable doing that, this is something that anybody can get into. Just have a little bit of compassion. There's people in prison right now that don't have anybody writing to them, that would love to have someone drop them a line. So this is another way that you can get involved in a very good, positive way. You could really change the life of someone.
I have one last thing I want to bring up, and this is huge. I don't know how I didn't even think about it. We have a project going called Let Freedom Sing. And what we're doing is it's a music project where we're actually getting the lyrics and music from inmates, and we're producing it out here. And we're actually going to put together a big CD and have a big musical event. And so we're looking for musicians, producers, people with studios, And we have already submitted a number of lyrics from inmates, and these are all protest songs. These are the songs of ending prohibition. Out of every civil rights conflict in America since the very beginning, some powerful music has come forth. And think about the Vietnam War era, or even think about the civil rights movement, the blues and the gospel music and the heavy duty songs that came out of the suffering. Well, we're here to do this again, and we have a war that's been waging since 1970, and a lot of casualties, and a lot of people have been hurt and touched, and we want to harness the power of music and bring to life some of the music from the inmates, especially.
That's a great idea. Really, there's not much more that translates to large quantities of people than art, music. I mean, it's really a great way to get a message across and to add to the support of your group. Joe, you are really doing yeoman's work. I mean, with all that's going on in your life, the fact that you have organized and taken the time to do all this, you are a marijuana hero. You're a hero, you're not defined by marijuana. But thank you. We want to thank you so much for the work that you do, and for giving us some time today to talk about that.
If anybody just wants to donate money, like a huge amount of money to your work, Joe, where would they do that at?
Well, we have a donate button on the website. And we're actually real close to having our 501c3 filed. So if you want to do that and get a tax write-off. And
Joe picks up the phone Joe actually picks up the phone on the number on the website. So if you really want to give money, you can talk directly to Joe and tell him how much.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is that Joe lives at Willow Springs. Willow Springs is a botanical garden in Paris, California, where you could bring your children. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And why don't you tell us about Willow Springs? Because, I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming out of Willow Springs, too.
Willow Creek Springs is a botanical garden and nursery. We sell plants. My wife actually makes skincare products from the herbs that we grow. We have a little herb farm. We teach classes. I teach classes about cultivation, permaculture. We have all sorts of demonstration gardens. We even have a hugelculture. Look that up and you'll see. It's a family-run organization. My daughters help me do this.
It's awesome.
We have little events. We have open house, Easter, Thanksgiving, and it's just a wholesome park-like setting where people can come and learn about growing plants.
Well, you find community and warmth, because that's what I found when I've gone there. Community and warmth.
That's good.
Absolutely.
We mentioned a little earlier, we're about to sign off here, but just want to tap for a second the other interesting story out of this week. And we mentioned it a little bit earlier, that we're going to have our first marijuana bowl, a marijuana Super Bowl. It is really incredible that out of all 50 states, the two states that have wound up going to the Super Bowl this year are Washington and Colorado. And, other than being a passing, interesting, fun fact, what I'm very excited about is this is going to be a huge PR opportunity for advocates, for the pushing forward of legislative ideas, of just talking about marijuana, because there's no way that's going to escape the press. They're all over this story, like crazy since Colorado. It's on CNN every day. It's in the news. It's in every major magazine and newspaper these days. So this is going to be just hallelujah, free publicity time for advocates, and I hope that advocates can take really good advantage of it and get messages like yours across, Joe, and get other great messages across that we can really do some advantageous work out of this Super Bowl, which should be fun on its own. So, Joe, once again, thank you so much for coming through and talking with us today, and we look forward to sticking with your story and having you come on and updating us and telling us about what's going on in that world. We appreciate it.
And I look forward to my story ending and going fishing. And I love having you guys.
I love that. I love that. Big fish fry. We're all invited. I can't wait. Pura vida, peace, everybody. Have a great week.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey, everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Podcast Network.